Ladies and gentlemen.
Hi there, coward.
You are now listening to Retro Radio.
Greetings, programs. Welcome to Retro Radio, your only weekly real player source of classic arcade game news and information, brought to you by www.monroeworld.com. I'm Shane Monroe. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me this week on Retro Radio. I'd like to take a couple of minutes to explain why the show has been off the air a couple of weeks. The first show was delayed due to Retrocade version 1.0's release to the public. That's right, if somehow you've been living on a deserted island for the last several weeks, Retrocade, the game player's emulator, is now public, playing 100 games and featuring a glitzy yet practical built-in front end and a huge speed performance increase over many multi-game emulators. The entire package and its ROMs are available on all the good emulation pages, including Insert Coin and Dave's Classics. The release was pretty hectic for most of us site ops anyway, since we were still doing last-minute beta testing all the way up to the last 5 minutes before release. At least I was, anyway. Once released, we could all sigh and take it easy for a couple of days. This was the first skipped show. The next week was delayed because I figured one of my two mystery interviewees would be done with their interview a few days after the normally scheduled show, which didn't happen, so I just figured I'd cancel the show for that week. Now we are back in the saddle. Most of you have noticed that there's no moving video this week, but I've opted to use Real Player G2 slideshow format. Hopefully this will open up Retro Radio to other people who didn't want to download the larger files. Plus it should dramatically increase the speed of the streaming process. This week is a news-only show. I will not be interviewing anyone. However, I will be giving you a ton of goodies to take on board. First, the juiciest news in emulation history, well, in my opinion anyway. The Level 7 Discs of Tron hang-up bug has now been properly squashed. That's right, the Eternal Discs of Tron bug has now been eliminated thanks to MAME dev team member James Thievenaut. I hope I said that right. If I don't, James, I'm sorry. You can write me and tell me how to do it, and I'll make a correction on the next show. If you want to know the particulars of the bug fix, check out the official work in progress page or wait for the Insert Coin Retrocade fact to be updated with all the glorious news. This bug will now be fixed in the next revision of MAME as well as in Retrocade version 1.1. What a fantastic thing for EMU players. Next, let's update with the Retrocade emulator. The boys at Alliance Corp are hard at work with the 1.1 release. Just to whet your appetite for the 1.1 release, here's a sneak peek. First, we can expect a couple of new games. Already added is the Great Dig Dug from Atari, and they're working hard on getting Galaga up and running as well. There will probably be a couple more added in there too, working on similar hardware as these other two games. Scanline support has already been added for several video modes with more to come. I also think by the time 1.1 goes public, we should have at least a partially implemented history pack file, which will offer historical information on games emulated by Retrocade. The team has also mentioned the fact that they are almost out of bugs to fix, which is a good thing. They have also fixed, yes, they have fixed, that nasty glitch with Riva 128-based video cards. So you can all stop sending everybody flames and whining and crying about how bad your video card is. And you can send your charitable contributions for Neil for this fix, because he owns you. Okay, now for the MAME update. The current version of MAME is version 3.4 Beta 3, and it is offering an enormous amount of supported games over version 3.3, a total of 804 to be exact. Naturally, there are a whole lot of Neo Geo games supported this release, which leads me to a quick sideline note here. Although I have not supported MAME in several weeks since Beta 1, I'm still getting dozens of questions from users about why a particular Neo Geo game doesn't work properly or doesn't have sound or any number of other different problems. First, I don't tech support MAME anymore. That's not my job. I do, however, usually answer non-Neo Geo related questions anyway, despite the fact. But I will no longer even reply to Neo Geo related questions in my email box. If nothing else, for the simple reason that the what's new.txt file clearly states in regard to supported games, quote, and a whole new bunch of Neo Geo games not tested, end quote. Just by the simple fact that these games themselves are not listed individually should give you some indication of the type of emulation you should expect to see from MAME in regards to Neo Geo emulation. This is like the old Punch-Out bit, where even though MAME would load it and the accompanying documentation never mentioned the game is supported, everybody continued to bug the site ops over and over and over and over again about why it didn't work. If your favorite Neo Geo game doesn't work, too bad. They haven't been tested. They haven't been quality assured to guarantee any workable portions. Be happy with whatever MAME does for your Neo Geo needs. When the games are working properly and the team feels that Neo Geo support is good enough, I am sure they will list the games that work properly and the ones that have known issues, just like they have all along, as well as known issues for the other games. Okay, enough of that side note. Now, what cool new games have been added to MAME? Well, mostly a ton of variant bootleg sets, plus a few games I can't ever remember seeing. But everybody is talking about Penguin Kun Wars. Hope I pronounced that right. Which I haven't seen yet, but a lot of people are talking about it, so I may have to check that one out. Other new features in this release include Fixed Speech and Karate Champ, rock and roll, PDPCM sample playback improvements and additions in certain games, like I believe Hyper Sports is one of those, also a very cool game. High score support in the Data East games like Karnov, etc., which Karnov rocks you. And something that could be great or disastrous for gamers, a more strict 32-bit CRC check for verifying zipped ROMs. This could mean probably that the tolerance for partially incorrect ROMs could go out the window, and the users may find himself replacing a lot of his old existing bad ROM sets. However, in this journalist's opinion, anything to help ensure that we got the right stuff in MAME is more than welcome by me. And on some side notes, MUViews got an interview with the famed Mirko Buffoni. I hope I said that one right, too. We just got a whole clan of these names this release of Retro Radio, one of the past leaders of the MAME project, and, of course, a serious driver contributor to the MAME project. It's a great interview. I highly recommend you go read it. The link to it is available at Insert Coin's news page and, of course, Dave's Classics. I think MUViews is going through a little bit of moving around right now, so I think you have to hit his page with an IP address. But it's worth it. Go check it out. The Real Arcade Art page, ran by Douglas, features tons and tons of images of classic arcade games and related information, has moved to a new address, http://realarcadeart.8m as in Mary.com. And that's the number 8, not the word 8. The site is growing and offers some great blasts from the past. I recommend you go check it out. For those of you following my Zybots plight, i.e. I've got a Zybots machine, but the sound PCB mysteriously doesn't work, although everything seems to check out right, I have an update. Mike Kinslow and his partner in gaming crime, Sean, are hooking me up with another sound PCB for my poor silent Zybots machine. Woohoo! Even if that one doesn't work, by cracky, I can start swapping stuff off of each of them until one of them works. Thanks a bunch for hooking me up, guys. Along with that, Paul Fry from the RC mailing list has the parts to fix my Super Sprint wheels. Woo! It's like Christmas at the Monroe House. Super Sprint isn't much fun with only one human. Thanks, Paul, for hooking me up with that. Well, folks, that's about it for this week's show. Next week, I hope to have at least one of my 2 interviews ready to roll. If not, I'll just be hitting you up with more news and information. Hopefully next week I'll also be able to implement my first trivia game, which I'm not going to tell you about. Of course, you're going to have to listen next week and find out what it is, which will offer you to test your skill as a classic arcade gamer in identifying games based on information. Until then, keep those programmers out of the system and get me that Chinese language file I asked for. End of line. And until then, keep it retro.